So welcome to today's session where we're looking at self-care, mental wellness, and staying positive in these extremely challenging times. You're going to see my stubby finger move around from time to time, and that's because I'm trying to let people in and perhaps answering questions. Right. Okay, so as you join us, just make sure you keep yourself on mute, if that's okay. And so to kick off with introductions, my name is Ishay Govender. I'm a journalist. I focus on culture through the lens of food. I'm really very interested in the voices of minorities and social justice. I'm here to represent SA POC at the table. We're a network that tries to foster and engage empowerment for people of color in the food and beverage industries in South Africa, but we have a Pan-African ethos and approach. And joining me today, I have four amazing women. Might I add, I'm always so delighted when our panels are filled with women. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to you. Zola?
Hi, everybody. Yes, thank you, Ishay, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm really honored and excited. Okay, so my name is Zola Nene. I'm a chef, a food stylist. I'm a cookbook author. I am a TV personality and basically an all-round lover of food and anything to do with food. Yeah, so I hope that I can offer some insight today. I know that the rest of the panel is like really strong, so I'm not sure. I'm always so unsure why Ishay picks me to be part of these things, but she's got more faith in me than I do in myself, it seems. But yeah, I guess I can only speak from personal experience and how I've been coping yeah, during this lockdown.
So in addition to a very long list of talents, Ms. Nene, as you know, is also exceptionally modest. It's so lovely to have you here. And so next, Parusha Naido.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here and inviting me, Ishay. I don't know, it's weird that Zola would say that she doesn't understand why she's here. But my main reason for being here is, well, because I've got, well, in the last few weeks, I've been doing this game where I've been choosing different countries and exploring them through food. It's a way of, well, my way of staying sane. And I've been generally promoting plant-based eating and trying to find, you know, easy to find, affordable ingredients and sharing recipes. So yeah, and I've come up with a few things that have helped me over this lockdown period that I guess will be useful to share with everyone. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Khanya?
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Ishay, for having me. So my name is Khanya, and recently I put out a book, an ebook called Shit's Real, Let's Heal, Eating in the Meantime. And it was just a project that I put together for me, you know, to kind of document my eating journey, you know, during lockdown, like how, and sort of create an anthology of recipes on my Insta that people were interested in. And yeah, it was just kind of that was just me in survival mode during lockdown, and, you know, figuring how to supplement my income, because a lot of the work that I was doing, you know, as I'm also a chef, and a lot of the work I was doing was kind of event-based, and that was put on hold, you know. So a project that I had reserved as a long-term thing had to sort of be like a short-term thing, and I became a cookbook author in like 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to learning more details about that.
Cool.
Pralini?
Okay, so yeah, Ishay and I chatted last night about this gig. So I'm here as like a last minute kind of insert, but I'm very glad to be here. I'm very pleased to be with all of you, such, you know, so creative and amazing. I mean, really. My foods, I'm not going to have that much food speak, but as you guys were speaking, I realized that I have been, apart from having started a Facebook Live project, not a project, it just kind of started, called Grounding in Precarious Times, which includes breathing, meditation, and yoga. For myself, I have been growing food. And for me, that's been a very sort of, even though I've kind of been, doing it most of my life, it's been different, more intentional, really looking at the relationships between me and what I'm putting into the ground. I've even gone so far as taking stuff out of my spice cupboard because I had no seeds, absolutely no seeds around. But then I realized actually I had plenty of seeds. They were just everywhere I could find. And so I've been planting a lot, and I guess that's part of my grounding bit for the lockdown. Yeah.
And Pralini, if you don't mind also mentioning, we met at the Decoloniality School earlier this year, and actually I feel the subject of your PhD studies draws greatly from both the combination of culture and food. So I don't know, you don't have to detail that, but if you could just mention it briefly, what you're focusing on.
Yeah, so I'm looking at sort of stories of seed. So I guess having mentioned it, it's just I'm immersed in it. I'm immersed in it every day of my life. But I'm looking at stories of seed through women, and the context is indenture. So I'm not going to just tell you the whole thesis, but that's basically, people ask me what my heritage is. My heritage is seed and ground and planting. That's my heritage.
Well, thank you for sharing. So for everyone else who's joining us now, you know that the topic we're addressing is self-care, mental wellness, and staying positive during these very difficult times. From time to time, you're going to see me with my finger just going across the screen there as more people join us. I'm going to ask people who are joining to please keep yourselves on mute, and but also at the same time, feel free as we're chatting to contribute on the chat as well, because we will have time in the end to address some of your questions and to speak to you. So this huge topic that we are going to solve in 45 minutes and give you all the solutions of how to stay positive and how to keep going, it's a challenge. In these precarious times, we need more than ever fortitude to keep going. And so one of the things I'm quite interested in is, what are some of the pressures and the challenges that you have faced since the start of this lockdown? And, what have you done, or what steps have you found yourself having to take in order to keep moving forward? Zola, would you like to start?
Sure. I guess the reason why I said I don't know why you chose me is because I guess at times I feel like I'm not surviving and I'm barely, breathing and just like drowning at all times. But I guess I am surviving because here I am able to actually communicate, the issues I've faced and how I've overcome them. And here I am sitting here today, able to speak to you. For me, obviously, my main work is usually TV-based. TV-based and sort of video-based. And I work with obviously crews and outside people for the broadcast, etc. So that has obviously had to come to a full stop. But I still have an obligation to my clients to fulfill certain roles and certain videos and stuff. So I've had to become my own personal one-man production show or production facility. Right. And I guess that in learning to become self-efficient is how I've managed to survive and stay, above water. So it's been difficult. It's been a learning curve, but I think that I try to look on the bright side of things. And had this not happened, I would never be able to edit. I would never be able to fully photograph my own stuff and do videos and make it happen for myself at a very, I like to think, high standard. So for me, that's been the motivation, to just think of it as a learning curve and just, roll with the punches. And I think that that's helped me survive. And also, having people or clients that are actually really understanding. I mean, they understand that, all of a sudden I've had to become this production facility, and I didn't know how to do it. I had to learn on the go, and thank goodness they've all been really understanding. And also I think that for once my OCD and like my pedantic nature has helped me. Usually it's a hindrance, but this time being so particular has actually helped me overcome a lot of fears that I've had around this whole changing climate of what my job and my livelihood entails. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question at all.
No, you absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many things I think within that we could chat about and also keep for a separate entire Zoom.
Yeah.
So you just figured something in a positive way. So Khanya, would you also like to tell us a little bit about the pressures and the challenges of this very particular time for you?
Yeah, you know, like what Zola says, it just resonates with me so much. And like, I think it just kind of really brings home to me why these conversations are so important, why it's so important for us to sit together and, you know, like discuss these things, because I also realized that I found a lot of strength and ability in myself in this time, in terms of I'm a walking production, you know, like I can do all these things that often, you know, when we work on set, and I don't do a lot of TV work, you know, I don't do as much TV work as you, Zola, but the times that I do have to do any form of production or editorial work, there's often so many people around you, and you realize now in lockdown when that work still has to continue, but we can't be in that same space where we've got like 1,000 camera people and 1,000 you know, crew members and stuff, that wow, I actually can do a lot of these things myself, you know, like, and it's been very empowering, you know, like, and it's been a weird time to be empowered, you know, like, but I think that my survival instincts kicked in like in a way stronger way than I had imagined, you know, like I often saw people producing cookbooks, and I saw how long that process tended to take, you know, and stuff, and how people would talk about it taking like a year or more. And I realized that, you know, with us living in the internet age and stuff, that there were other avenues or other ways of doing it, you know, that didn't require for it to be so painstaking or so expensive, you know, or require like such a big staff, and that I know how to photograph food, you know, like I know how to style myself, I know how to write, you know, by myself, and I know which avenues to put this work out on and stuff, and yes, you know, like clients are understanding in this time. Everyone has, you know, there's like another layer of like humanness within everybody that's just emerged right now, like that has been unbelievable, you know. And I'm still operating with that thing of that pressure of, oh flip, I'm going to get into trouble, you know, always thinking that you're in trouble and things. And we're in a exceptional situation right now where things are really different, and for you to be able to operate where you can still put out excellent work it's a miracle, you know. It's amazing and stuff, and it's just been so good to get that kind of love and understanding from people who are supposed to just be, you know, like faceless corporates and stuff. So yeah, like I've been making it, you know.
Well, that's good. Okay. And we're going to get into the details a little bit later as well about the book specifically, because I believe that, for example, the photographs are from Instagram. Am I right? From your Instagram feed. But we
some of them, yeah. You know, a lot of them, yes.
So we will get into that shortly. Pralini, could you tell us a little bit about the pressures and challenges that you've encountered?
Yes. Okay. So for me, I think it was a kind of anxiety around my embodiment, you know, sort of my place in the world in terms of my body. And I've realized that a lot of my friends and a lot of other people were feeling the same way. It was this kind of disconnect, you know, not being able to get together and plot and plan and just be together. I mean, it's such an important part of being a human being. Touching, you know, this embodied person that we are. And you know, I'm basically going to just only focus on the Facebook, on the Grounding in Precarious Times Facebook page or group or whatever it is. And it really began quite organically. It's not for an income. I haven't, you know, had to worry about that, fortunately, in these past couple of months. It's going to change. But for now, you know, I haven't had to worry about an income. And so it was merely trying to reach out to other women who were also feeling really, really anxious, not being able to, you know, feeling that we were tied in and locked down and worrying about the next person in the next place or whatever it was. So that's how it began, just to start by just realizing that we matter, even though we were not having these conversations or not meeting, that we still matter. And the idea of self-care, to me, strangely enough, is not embedded in positivity necessarily, because I think we have this binary between positive and negative, and some things, you know, sort of depression or anger being negative qualities. And I needed a space that felt kind of authentic. I wanted other people to feel safe in that space as well, and to be able to just ground in whatever we were feeling, whether it was flailing around or you know, kind of just generally freaking out, but just to ground ourselves in that moment and feel okay, here we are, and we can actually just share this moment and breathe together. And so that's how that started. Yeah.
So I want to get into the details of the Grounding in Precarious Time group, and also some of the myths that surround yoga from a Western perspective. But before that, and before going to Parusha to tell us about some of her challenges, we just want to welcome everybody who's joining us now. Please keep your microphones on mute. And as you know, we're speaking about self-care, nurturing mental wellness, positivity. Again, I want to state that we are not, if I haven't mentioned it before, we are not medical or wellness professionals. And there's everything we discuss here is certainly from a personal perspective. And it's, you know, things that have assisted us and assisted our panelists, but this is by no means any professional advice. And if at any time any topics that are discussed here maybe makes you feel triggered, or you are going through something very difficult, I recommend that you reach out to a counselor, to a friend, and to the South African Depression and Anxiety group as well. So on that note, thank you all for joining us. So Parusha, can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you have faced during this lockdown period and how you've tackled that?
Hi everyone, thanks Ishay. So in case you're wondering, the people that just arrived, why I've got this backdrop and this outfit, it's because the reason that I'm here is to share about this virtual traveling that I've been doing, using like choosing a different country every week or two, and then exploring the food, the dress, music, and everything that I could find online, basically, because there are many ways to learn about new countries without being there physically. So it's been a kind of a nice way to play, and I think that's been very important for me, because I've live alone, and I didn't realize before this lockdown, although I enjoy my solitude, there's only so much solitude like someone who likes being alone really likes. And I do go out. I used to go out to friends' homes and eat at their homes, and that you didn't realize before, well, we didn't realize how long this was going to last. So in the beginning, you know, you think, a Zoom chat will be fine. And the Zoom chats sort of wear off in their novelty after a while. And so this became something that I started doing with my sister. We shared poems, and it was a way to check in every day. And then we also found recipes, and we'd make the same thing. And then we decided at some point, why don't we just, find a poem from a country, like a poet and a poem, and then we find a recipe and we have a dinner together. And then we went further, and then we decided to dress up. So we started at the top of Africa and went from Morocco to Algeria to Tunisia. And then I thought, well, it's going to take a very long time to go down. So just rather, write all the countries down and pick out, the name. And so now I'm in Nigeria, exploring the food, the music, and, things that I can find online. So the challenge mainly at the moment has been to, stay, I guess, playful. And, there's a revolution happening in the world. There's so much information. And if you're, experiencing this also alone, like Pralini was saying, we're about touch. We don't have any, maybe people that are on their own don't have that opportunity to just have a hug and to be in the company of other human beings. So it's necessary. Well, I'm also interested in sensory experiences, and how having things that have more of a sensory, that involve more of the senses, boost your serotonin, oxytocin, all these feel-good hormones. So my main challenge has been to be also positive when there's other people in your lives or yourself experiencing change in your work, retrenchments, unemployment, not having any work, other friends and your family members. If you have to go to a hospital, you can't actually go into the hospitals anymore. Things like that have changed. Your members of your family that are, experiencing difficulties, and how to be there for your people that you care about, and then maintain some form of, sanity. So for me, like trying to find ways of, also you have to cook more meals for yourself and clean. And then you have your sort of 5 things that you make on a regular basis, or 10 or whatever it is, to just like find new recipes and mix it up and keep it fresh. That's been a challenge. And this game of finding new countries and exploring has been a solution.
Well, I've found this really fascinating. And one of the challenges with my work is if I'm not out in the field, I'm not working. And it's the first year since embarking on this career that I have, at this stage of the year, I haven't been out. So that's been a challenge. But surprisingly, with everything going on and in the world itself, I personally haven't found it as crushing as I thought I would. I think that's one of the things that people have been checking in with me about. Like, wow, it's June and you haven't left, what's happening? So what's happening in my world is the media landscape has changed, and there is no travel, and there is no, there's no magazine to place the work in to start off with. So watching you traveling in the way you were traveling and actually performing that research, which is what you're doing. This is sort of the pre-research to a trip that a lot of travel writers will embark on, reading up on the people, trying to understand the dishes. This is precisely what you're doing. And I found that fascinating. I'm very curious for everybody, for all our panelists, was there a specific moment during this lockdown, that a single moment, if we could touch on that very briefly, that made you feel that things have changed? And for me, it happened sort of, I think somewhere in March, when those reminders start coming on Facebook, about 1 year ago and 2 years ago. And there was such a consistency in terms of my feed that on this particular date and from then up until June, I'm working and meeting fascinating people in different places. And for me, that was the reminder that this is not going to happen for a very long time. Zola?
For me, I think it happened very early on. It was when the lockdown extension happened, because when lockdown was first, lockdown was first introduced, my dad actually came. Okay, so currently my mom, my sister and her husband and my nephew live with me. So my dad had come when the lockdown sort of was starting, thinking, you know, it's going to be just like a month or so. So he'll come and stay with us, so we're together. And when the extension happened, I could see when the announcement happened, we sort of sat and we were listening to the president speak together as a family. And I could see in my dad's eye a real concern. And he was like, okay, guys, so I can't stay. I have to go back to George so that I am close to the plant. My dad works at a petroleum plant, and that's an essential service. So he was like, I can't stay. And actually, you guys must realize that I don't know when I'm going to be able to see you guys again. And I think that for me was like, whoa. This thing is hectic. So I think that for me, that was the turning point for how serious it actually was and how families were legitimately going to be separated. So that was the turning point for me, for sure.
Yeah, and I imagine that this is a reality for many people. It's happening in my own family as well. You know, I haven't been able to get to my father in who's in KwaZulu-Natal, and you know, we had plans, and these have been pushed and pushed and pushed. And of course, if in your families you have parents or other members who are either elderly or have health issues, it's an even bigger it's a very real, it's actually beyond a challenge. It's frightening. And so in many instances I find that whereas our role would always be to be comforted, we are now in the role of being comforters for our parents. This is, I mean, it's unprecedented. And what about you, Khanya? Was there a moment for you?
Yes, definitely. And I think, like, for me, it's taken a really long time for it to officially hit that this is happening, you know, because I think I speak for myself always, but I think that a lot of people can resonate with the fact that you know, like, I haven't had to give up a lot of privileges and stuff, you know, during lockdown. Like, I still have everything that I need at arm's reach, you know, like, unlike a lot of people, you know, I still get to decide what I want to eat, for instance, you know, I still have access to the things that I need. But what a moment where it really hit for me was like just the other day, actually, it might have been like 2 days ago, where I was trying to organize something. It was work related, but it was a work related thing that was going to allow me to be able to see my partner, who I hadn't seen since before lockdown. Wow. And reading up, you know, I've obviously been following the news to a degree that is safe for my mental stability and stuff. But, you know, I learned something new the other day about the fact that, you know, we kind of have these aviation levels as well, which are kind of independent of whether we're on level 3, 4, or 5. And because this was going to be a work thing, it was like, I'm sure I'd be able to easily get a permit and stuff, but because I'm in Port Elizabeth, we are in only going to be included in the 3rd phase in terms of flights being allowed to go out to leave PE airport and stuff. So it kind of flashed my dreams of being able to see my partner. And I, you know, haven't seen her in such a long time. And like, I just basically broke down in that moment, and I was just like, okay, this is real. This is a real thing. And it's not about work, you know, it really isn't about losing work opportunities, because, you know, like, our careers are here, they're not going anywhere. And I think for me, survival is not something that I'm not afraid that I'm not going to survive, you know. I'm not as afraid as a lot of other people out there. I think that it just brought home the idea that I'm in lockdown with my mom, you know, so I'm not alone. But it did bring home the idea that I am alone in a lot of ways, you know. The isolation, the idea of isolation now is no longer just, it's not an idea anymore. It's like real, that it's indefinite, you know. I don't know when I'm going to see this person again. And it makes, you know, moving forward really hard. So yeah, I think that was my defining moment.
Yeah. So Pralini,
Yeah.
I'm quite interested. I mean, we are all interested in grounding sessions, and I thought maybe because we're also keeping the time in mind, and I know we've only got half an hour left, and we've got so many things to discuss, that you could tell us. I'm going to read something that Pralini sent me in terms of what her thinking was behind her Facebook live. Grounding in Precarious Times, with the yoga sessions. She says, I began these offerings as tools for many women who, like me, are weighed by the violence and uncertainty of the transition we are immersed in. Yoga and meditation are certainly not going to solve the structural problems that we are faced with, but it helps bring us in conversation with ourselves. That process is seldom blissful or pretty, but here we can cultivate a space which is compassionate and caring. For many of us who have been told we are not worth a whole lot, the act of caring for ourselves and knowing ourselves intimately is pretty damn radical. Anyway, there's another reason I began the Women's Only space. This is a lifeline for me too. I also need the connection with the community, especially now. The space was an embryonic idea where I imagined we could plot and plan. So on that note, Pralini, could you just tell us very briefly, what's the reception been like to the space for others and for yourself?
Well, I'm just going to talk about myself because, the interaction is there, and, I can see that there's a huge need for it. But, that second part of what you said, that it was a lifeline for me, actually is, it's completely, that's what it becomes. I mean, you go out there thinking, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And then, think, okay, yeah, I do this because I've been doing the yoga for many years with community and, not charging because I wanted to be accessible. And then you think, oh, okay, I can do this. And of course, there've been a few women that, a few of my friends that said, we need it. But, at the end of the day, it was me. I need it. I come to that space. So, all of your challenges are resonating so strongly for me because sort of at the beginning of lockdown, my dad went to hospital. And I was like freaking, he lives alone. And I was freaking out because he lives alone. And how do we get to him? He lives in Maritzburg. Anything could happen. And then he had to go to hospital of all places. And think, oh my God, not hospital. And then we realized he has stage 4 cancer. It just kept going and going and going. So it's been, if I didn't have the grounding in precarious times, who knows why we start these things? Sometimes it's intuitive, right? If I didn't have that, I'd be a complete wreck because I have spent so much of my time being in brain fog, kind of, anxious about him and his processes and what am I supposed to do in the whole thing? Of course, being me, I did shoot out to go and see him twice because for me that was an important thing. But it's been rough. The idea of being there for family, that's what we do, isn't it? Like in normal life, we kind of, somebody is sick and you go to their aid and you're there and you're with them. Or, and my daughter broke down. She lives in Cape Town and she says, look, I don't want to come here. I don't want a permit for funeral, because that was the immediate thought. I'm not going to be able to see my tata soon. I'm not going to. She's too far away. So it's been all of that. So I'm grateful that I created the space for myself. So
So I think a lot of times in the reaching out that we do, in whatever ways it is we're doing, be it cooking, be it entertainment, be it writing, it's also a way for us to process what's happening in our own lives, to share a part of ourselves and to heal that part as well. Certainly, one doesn't always feel that when you're as a writer, as a journalist, you don't always get a moment to acknowledge that because particularly when you're busy on deadline. But in these quieter moments now, and you used a very interesting phrase, because I can relate to that terribly well. And you mentioned brain fog. And that's precisely how I have felt in the last few months. And as somebody who, like everyone here joining us, you know, we're used to moving. We're moving yesterday, we're not moving today. It's required of your work, it's required of just, if you have a brand, that is what's required of you, that you are moving. You are constantly one step, not necessarily ahead, but you try to be ahead of your own thoughts even. And in my particular case, without having a supply or any assignments, it's taken me a really long time to process and to truly understand what is happening to me, what is happening to the industry in which I work, and what role I could possibly play in assisting others, and how that is going to change, because that has changed. And I think all of us are speaking here are speaking in terms of things we've done now that are different to what we did before, and if not different, building on in a different direction. Zola, you know, in the beginning you had mentioned, you joked about why I had invited you, and I want to say this, but at the same time without diminishing your own realities and challenges. And that is, you have consistently been one of the most positive people I know in the industry, and I know you for many years now. But having said that, I know things don't happen with filter. You know, life is happening in the background, and you are not necessarily Instagramming those moments. But I just would like to know, you know, what keeps you balanced and grounded?
Definitely my family. I know that I'm very privileged to be able to not be alone. And usually I am somebody who loves my own time, my own space, but I don't have that, and they ground me absolutely. You know, I can boast to them about something that I've done and that I'm so excited about, or a picture I've just taken and I was like, oh, look, I managed to get it, and I was losing light, and they're like, cool, looks like your other pictures. Do you know what I mean? So they're that energy for me, and I think that is very necessary. And to speak about you saying that I'm always, you know, positive, and I always like just a happy individual. That's a decision that I've made for myself, and that is the type of content that I want to share with people, because yes, real life happens, and bad things and sad things are consistent and constantly happening, but it's so easy to find the bad news, that to be a point of positivity for somebody just for 15 seconds on an Insta story, that's important for me. So I choose to only ever show positive things on my platforms. But yeah, you know, it's real life. Yeah, and I'm not going to tell everyone that, you know, my sister just told me that my apple tart was rubbish. I'm just going to share that I love it, you know, because you don't want to constantly be bombarded with negative things. So I just try to be a positive light, and I'm not saying that my family, you know, shuts down everything I do. That's not what I'm saying at all. But they do. They keep me focused and grounded. Absolutely. And
I know you also have come from a family of really good cooks, so you know they want. Having said that, from my perspective, because I think about all of you who work in such a spotlight often, that you know, we all know there's realities of stuff happening in your own lives, and I sometimes wonder how that must feel, that if there's something going on in the background, that, you know, you obviously channel that in other spaces with your, you know, within personal relationships, I suppose, as opposed to an individual who has the luxury of using Instagram as a diary or Facebook as a diary, you know, just to share all of those thoughts. Parusha, you had started in your introduction speaking to us about this very novel approach you've taken to your particular situation, where you are at home, you are alone, and you're researching, and you're traveling, you're virtual traveling. And I mentioned to you, you were doing all the pre-research that a writer would do, but you're just making it so much more interesting because you're cooking up all those recipes and you're looking for the fabrics and that kind of thing. So I just thought maybe if you could just go back and tell us a little bit about the inspiration for it and how from what I've gathered, you're not doing this alone. You are doing it in collaboration with, is it family members who are supporting this as well?
Well, so I'm the one who's actually finding the information and then I share it. So no one else has actually gotten into the creation of the, like the links. So basically I've just found a whole lot of links and now I'm kind of honing the methodology. So like what to do when you get to the country, find a bunch of, which is not always easy, vloggers and bloggers. And, it's best to find some local ones. As obviously there are loads of videos, travel videos made by people from other countries who are just, traveling through, and it's from their perspective. And often it's like this kind of like exotic, rare, like kind of filter over it. But so I started off with my sister, and then I just share the links I find with also a few friends. And I'm actually going to create a website where I can just put all the links in so anyone can come, and I'll just share the link to the site. So if they want to go and see what I found when I was in Morocco. And also the nice thing is I've connected with other people who are from those countries. And I've always been following them, or they've been following me. And I didn't really ever have a conversation with them. So I've also, other family members, like my mom had been to Morocco and been up the Atlas Mountains and got a piece of amethyst crystal. My stepfather had been to Tunisia, and I've known him for 27 years. I've never had a conversation with him about his travels. And so that, so there were lots of other people, because I'm doing these things, tell me interesting facts or tell me to look at, I've gotten recommendations about a book I should read, a musician I should listen to. And it's become collaborative because so many people have information that they want to share with me because I'm doing this sort of virtual travel. Another friend who's actually here, Jess, she went to Morocco and had taken a beautiful photo series, which she shared with me. So that's also become part of my, like collection of links. So it's been actually, quite an interesting thing that started off with myself and my sister, and then more and more people are interested in. My sister dropped off, and they said another friend was like, I want to go to Nigeria. I want to make, the Nigerian food. And it's also quite cool because people don't all have time for every single thing. And a couple of weeks we did Zoom chats, and I put up a background, and we did, family get together. And I was surprised at how many people got involved, that like my brothers, for example. So, and it's been, I guess, in a way, collaborative now. Well, definitely. I had another friend who's from Nigeria, who I thought was from Cote d'Ivoire, actually was like, hey, that thing you posted, that's my childhood, food, that like food of my childhood, brings back like all these memories. And then we end up having a conversation. So the one interesting thing that also came up from this is that usually you go through chaos on your own, and you're used to your life being chaotic, and going through it on your own. If you are that sort of person who's always, like going through their own stuff. And right now, everyone in the world is going through this pandemic together. So for the first time, there's a global kind of togetherness in this chaotic time. And usually you're just, running through it on your own. So it's been nice where more people are wanting to get involved and have a dinner. Let's, try out some, Tunisian or Nigerian food and sit down and just talk about, and, pretend that we've just been to Lagos, or, we walk through the market. And
it's quite fascinating because you are right. Globally, everybody is in their own version of it, going through, experiencing the pandemic together. And we've always had disasters that have been per region, per country, per war-torn area, and not of this scale. What's also interesting is previously the idea of technology was attached to that very fast-paced, very always moving, never stopping. And here we are relying on, for example, Zoom or technology to help us in the slowing down, because there is no other way for us to gather at that table. We almost took it for granted, I think, being able to pop out to a restaurant or buy a takeaway whenever you wanted, or see a friend. And, you know, to some extent, I'm finding that this technology is, you know, where I myself would have wanted to shut down after a certain time because of spending so many hours in the field, am using it a little bit more to feel connected, you know, whereas previously, because I felt it was always related to work, I would want to switch it off to feel connected to myself. But, you know, here we're using it for this as well. I want to speak a little bit about food. And so Parusha, you follow a plant-based diet. So all of the recipes that you would be preparing, you are adapting them or finding the plant version of that. And you've mentioned that there's a fine line between cooking, eating as healing and soothing, and being careful about using it destructively. I also want to mention with Khanya, you also speak a lot about consuming food. You said that it has been a source of joy and freedom on the one hand, but when, for example, you were in a mental health facility, which you detail in your introduction to the book, Shit's Real, Let's Heal, you said it was so regimented and somewhat almost toxically so. So, Khanya, I thought you could perhaps speak to us briefly about what striking that balance is like for you in consuming food in a way that makes you feel free, but also, and not controlled, but at the same time, you know, meeting somewhere in the middle.
Thanks, Ishay. I think, you know, like for me, what really has freed me a lot, you know, in these times of like, sorry, my charger. We just have like so much time to just sit and think about what the next meal is, like whilst we're busy eating this meal, and we just get so obsessed about the details of the day and stuff, you know, and the details of like what we're eating all day, that it just, you know, we kind of get obsessed and everything. And I don't have the formula, you know, and I think for me, what's made it healthy for me, or what's made or balanced out my relationship with food and not made it so weird, is just starting anew every day, you know, starting afresh every day, and kind of taking away this idea of like just removing this idea of like abstinence, like I'm not going to eat certain things, or that there are bad foods and good foods, you know. My cookbook, for instance, it's like devoid of any idea of, you know, diet culture existing, you know, like I just kind of, I eat really freely. I don't recommend anything to anybody, you know, like so I don't know, what was the question again?
Just sort of like maintaining that, because one of the things you also said is that other cooks and chefs could relate to you, in the sense that when you are preparing food all the time, maybe you don't want to be consuming it. But when you speak about food being joy and freedom versus the kind of nourishment you were receiving when you were in the mental health facility, and that was more about having you fed and it being on time, and you said it was so documented that it was on the other end.
Look, Ishay, you know what? At the end of the day, I never want to speak negatively about, you know, my time in the health facility, the mental health facility, because I understand why they needed to, you know, kind of be so strict and so, you know, perfectly timed about everything. It's because we were taking medication, you know, so we needed to know that at 6 p.m. you've already had supper, you're going to have your meds, or, you know, etc. But for me, it just kind of being in that space messed with my relationship with food in a big way, you know, because it just became this very strategized thing, you know, and there was, you know, when you're eating in a hospital, the food is not personalized. It's not being prepared with love, you know, by somebody who loves you, who cares about you. It's being prepared by a health worker who's just doing what they've got to do. So striking that balance, you know, between having a routine and eating on time and making sure that I actually have breakfast, versus, you know, food being like a source of joy and freedom, like you put it, like I also put it, is something that I'm working at every day, you know. Like just before I left the hospital, the hospital taught me a lot about routine, you know, so, and which was something that I didn't have at all in my life. Like it was a mess. Like I would eat breakfast at 3 p.m. sometimes. So I got to a stage where just before, I think the night before I was being checked out, I drew up a schedule of my own, you know, and it was a schedule that it looked like a real day that I would actually have, you know. I wouldn't wake up at 9 and then go and gym in the garden. Like that's not me. That's not real at all. So I made a schedule, you know, that was going to look similar each day, but it was also going to be natural, and it was going to involve me rummaging through the fridge at about 2 o'clock, you know, like, and I made space for those types of things. I made room for those types of things because that's the kind of eater that I am, you know. I do struggle with breakfast. I struggle with the desire to actually eat breakfast, and I decided that that was the one time that I was going to be strict with myself. Like, sorry, buddy, you have to have breakfast. You have medication that you've got to take in the morning. So, you know, and it is important, you know, it is a thing that I have to do whether I like it or not. So, yeah, it's just about kind of making those meals exciting and making those meals nice. And so I have a lot of fun with the grocery shopping part of it, because I'm just like, I always want my meals to be badass, you know, no matter what. So
it's really interesting. You know, we understand from an academic point of view that you can look at food from all these angles. You know, food represents so many things. Food also represents scarcity. But listening to you speak, I'm reminded that if food is fuel, so in a specific situation, if one requires medication, food has that function of fuel, simply to, you know, line the stomach and allow that medication to perform well. And then we also speak, as we often do nostalgically, about food being love, and food being, you know, just tied to memories of our mother, and it performing that function too. Zola, I would love to know, what is your attitude in general to food and the consumption of food? I know it's a topic bigger than what we can cover right now in terms of the wellness culture, but in terms of your approach, how do you view food?
For me, it's definitely a form of an enjoyment and an emotive thing for me. So I express love through food. So I try not to restrict myself, which is why I look the way I do, but hey, it's another story for another day. Whereas my sister, who is a sports scientist, she views food very differently. So I know for myself, and I've accepted that about myself, that the food that I make is to bring joy. That's my only motivation whenever I come up with anything, whenever I cook anything. It's never to, I guess, yes, it is to nourish people, because, you know, in essence, that's what food does. Yeah. But I never restrict myself when it comes to health things. So I always just I always look at food through an emotive eye, never through any other sort of lens.
Does it spark joy?
Absolutely. Must. At all times, otherwise it's a failure. That is my
the qualifier. So, you know, there's so many other things I would love to chat to you guys about. And one was, you know, in chatting to Khanya, you reminded me about this idea of routine. And routine was something I remember Parusha had mentioned, that she has something of, you know, going outside into the garden for 10 minutes. just to enjoy some sunshine. Well, not today. And I was thinking, that was such a powerful reminder for myself, because I have the time, and why am I not doing that? Instead of, I keep struggling against, oh, I need to make time to do this, but I actually don't have that assignment, And Parusha, I thought maybe you could just tell us a little bit about this idea of practicing a daily routine.
Yeah, actually, it's something I was chatting to with a friend who's here, hi Martin, yesterday.
Hi.
Basically, having a routine is something that can keep you sane, and you can play around with it. But it's good to have a basic structure of what you want to do in the morning and know what you're doing with your day. Just have that structure and try and stick to it. And then now and then you can, mess around with, lying in bed or just eating toast and peanut butter if you've planned, this meal and cooking. But for me, getting up, doing some form of like relaxation, whether it's breathing exercises, yoga, or just standing outside looking at the sky, but also 10 minutes of sunshine. I mean, there's some days where there is no sunshine, but I know that in Europe, there are lots of people that have these globes that they have during winter. And like in South Africa, even in in winter, we do get sunshine, even if it's, the temperature drops. So just for me, this whole lockdown, I have tried to spend 10 minutes of my day in the morning, at least, and get some sun. And by knowing what you have to do, it's like you can't control a lot of what's happening in the world, but focusing on what you can, you can manage. And it's, it definitely helps with my own personal mental health. And like Mary Kondoing, like you were saying, getting rid of all the
Yes.
things that don't bring you joy, and increasing, like, especially with your thoughts, like try and go, okay, being anxious about this is something that's definitely not going to bring me joy. So I'll just have a plan. Every day I'm going to, so some people will need to have no structure when it comes to food, and other people will need to know, like, tomorrow I'm going to eat this. I'm going to shop and buy those things that will relax my mind. Like for me, I do like having, like, knowing what I have in my cupboard and knowing, these are the sort of things I'm going to cook this week.
No, it so depends on the individual. So at this point, before we're going to spend just a few minutes delving into the last one, which is a little bit fun and indulgent. But before that, I just want to thank everyone who's come to join in on this chat on self-care and nurturing mental wellness and keeping positive in this time. I would like to invite you to add more of your comments on the chat, because we will be reading them out. So the last one being, I've always loved I love Issa Rae, and in Insecure, throughout all the seasons, they speak about this hashtag self-care Sunday, and I guess I love it because, one, it's something I've never been able to do, and at the same time it seems like something odd to aspire to. I mean, what is self-care? Is it applying a mask? And I think to myself, well, now I have the time to do it. I've got nowhere to go with brilliant skin. But, is it that? Is it something more? Is it connecting with yourself? I think to different people in different moments, self-care would mean different things. I think for many women, the idea of self-care is highly indulgent, particularly women who, are in certain generations and certain cultural groups. I think for many younger women, it seems to be part of the lingo and part of the way they approach taking care of themselves and well-being. So I thought if everyone could just give us a little idea of what self-care means to you, and if there's anything in particular that you've had time to do for yourself now that may encourage others to do something like that for themselves too. Who would like to go ahead and let us know about self-care?
Did you say my name, Ishay?
I did. I heard you very silent. I was wondering.
For me, I guess it's a simple, for me, self-care is literally take quiet time, because I think my mind's always racing. I'm always thinking about the next shoot, the next this, the next that. Taking just 10 minutes to just sit and be still and force myself to do that, for me, is the best sort of centering thing that I can do for myself. So that's something that I make sure that I do every single day. And in a house full of people, I think that that's also important, to just find a space where you can just be by yourself. Yeah, that for me is very important.
Thank you. Pralini?
Okay, self-care. Self-care for me has been about just showing up for myself, really. So even if it's meant working on something that I've needed to work on for myself, that for me has felt like self-care. But yes, going into the sun, daydreaming, I do virtual pomodoros. So when I'm working, I do like 25 minutes of work. It doesn't always work. I think I think I do have an attention deficit disorder, but I do like 25 minutes of a little bit of work, and then I spend 5 minutes daydreaming, because daydreaming is one of my best things. I love daydreaming. So if I can daydream in the sun with my bare feet in the ground, that's my best thing. So yeah.
And may I just add, to everyone who doesn't know, Pralini is in KwaZulu-Natal, so they're definitely blessed with far better weather. Are you in Durban?
Oh my gosh.
So we all know. How about you, Khanya?
Sorry, me. I have my walk that I take every now and again. I just put my earphones in and I just plug into like whatever album I feel like listening to that day. And then like I'll take like a long ass walk until that album is finished, and then I'll just go home. It's my favorite thing to do, and it's simple. It doesn't cost me anything unless I decide to like pass by Spar and get some donuts on the way home, which is what usually happens actually. Yeah. So I usually take my walk and have a J and listen to my album and then come home,
Nice.
Yeah.
And how about you, Parusha?
Sorry, I missed the question.
So
my computer died. Sorry, I'm back.
We were ending our chat just with some idea of what you do for yourself in terms of self-care, and we were speaking about how for a lot of people, depending on the perhaps even the age you are or the cultural group that you come from or you belong to, self-care can often seem a very indulgent topic to even address. But is there something that you do for yourself that maybe others could also do during this time when they're feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think one thing I've really gotten into is music. And this is part of the travels, virtual travels, a lot of the time. I basically find playlists from different countries. So, there's so many cool playlists to get into. That's number one. Number two is I actually reach out. I think that amongst all Black, brown, people of color, trying to keep your problems to yourself and work through them on your own, it's kind of like a way of doing it. Like just look, like be strong, don't share your problems. It's like a really amazing thing that I've started to cultivate friendships where I can communicate. A lot of times that you would just say, oh, things are good, it's all good. So having conversations with friends is for me something that I've started doing, and it's only been a recent thing, but sharing more authentically, that's a definite self-care practice nowadays, having conversations. And of course I'm like finding joy in cooking. This is a real therapy for me. Just you're doing things with your hands, like rolling biscuits, or getting your hand. A lot of people baking bread. But anything you can, get your hands involved with, it does it, and chopping vegetables, even washing dishes. I've started to make this a therapeutic activity, like the warm water, and enjoying those sort of things, like making my home clean and nice and neat. For me, it's like a joyful activity because I get to sit in the space. So and every day I set myself a task. For like a task and an act of service. It's also a way of caring for myself, and it can be like maybe big things like, you know, volunteering, donating money, or it can just be calling your grandparents or your parents or a friend who you think might be struggling. So those are a few of the things. And then, of course, just spending some time to look outside at the sky. So, yeah. And actually, that's something I take seriously. Yeah.
I must actually thank you for that reminder, because earlier this year, I discovered quite by accident during the routine blood test that women in my my age bracket could sometimes be vitamin D deficient, and I was quite surprised that I was vitamin D deficient. So I've got to take a weekly tablet for that, vitamin for that, but you know, being in the sun. So to conclude, thank you so much to all our panelists for joining, sharing so openly and honestly. As you could hear from our chat, these are fascinating women. So please, if you don't already follow them on all their social medias, do, but I'm pretty sure all of you who are listening are fans and you do follow them and you know them and know their work, support them. If you don't follow SAPOC, table.com, do, and that's SAPOCT on Instagram as well. We'd love to hear from you. And lastly, I would just like to invite Parusha to read some of the comments that have come through.
Yeah, so we've got a few from Amanda. She said it's whatever you need it to be, from quiet time, just sitting, to a face mask, to a coffee. It's time for yourself. Some of us have less work and some of us have more personal work to do. It's different to anyone. She also said later on she stays offline, reads, talk to people, because I usually don't like peopling. Oh, and journaling, that's a great one. And then Mystery 5 said, self-care for me has always been regulating my hormones. It changed the way I'm able to regulate everything. Aparna says, love the idea of the daily act of service. Pralini, you also said, I want to add that I'm locking down with a daughter who loves to cook and a boyfriend who plays music, and I feel cared for. And also joy in the miniature and the ordinary and seeing things grow. And then lastly, Jess says, thank you. It was good for the soul. So
Yeah, man.
Thank you to everybody. So thanks so much. And we'll see you. There'll be SAPOC at the table is going to have another Zoom talk tomorrow. I will share details of that in the afternoon. I wish all of you a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Same, ladies. Thank you so much.
You're
Bye,
all
guys.
welcome.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.